In this video, I'll be taking you through creating an export file for translation, then what happens if there are changes to the source language, and then taking those changes and then realigning target and source language text. So what we'll do first is we'll open up our demo project. Then we have our text module contained inside there. Then we have export and import translations here. So we'll expand that. There are two different types. There's dialogue and string export and import translation. So we'll access that. You can right click here for a new export template, or indeed click up here for create new export template. And then we can choose our target language here, so we'll choose Spanish. And then we can drag over the strings folder. Now you can do this on a per folder basis if you wish. I'll drag the whole lot over. There you go, drag and drop. Then I click on next. Then we can select the columns that we'd like the translator to actually be able to see. So at the moment we have our string GUID, identifier, source language text, and a target language text, which in this case is Spanish. So what we can do down here is we can then say, well, actually it'd be very useful for this particular translator to see the Italian, German and French, if there is indeed any available. What we can also do is add maximum text length as well, which would be particularly useful, and we'll add that to the list here. So now we can click on next, and it will go to template properties. So now we can call this one Spanish trans, and then the export file format here, so we'll put it down as an Excel, and then we can add a description if we wish here. I now click on OK. So we now have a Spanish translation export template in our list. What we can now do is, in the filter view up here in the left hand corner, is we can set the period from which we'd like to export our strings. So we'll run it from the 27th up to the 28th until 1 o'clock, and then we can refresh our preview. And then this is basically what will be exported when we press that button. So here we have our Italian, German and French text. We have our source language text, target language translation, identifier, and then our GUID is the first column. So once we're happy with that, that all looks good, we can then click on our Start Export. Okay, so now we have to specify an export file, and we call it span translation. Okay, and then we save that. So that's completed, and 77 strings have been exported. Saved to my desktop, and we can now click on Finish here. So that export has now taken place and now appears over here. I've now opened up the Spanish translation file here. So we have our string GUID in the top left hand corner, got identifier, source language text, target language text, and then our max text length, and then the other languages in there as well for additional information. So what we can do here is if we bring these down a bit in size, we can then add some target language translation at this point. So the Spanish translations have now been added into this file, so this can be saved out and now sent back for import. I've now switched back over to the person in charge of the importing and exporting at the developer. So before I actually take that file back from the translator and import it into the development project, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create some changes to existing strings and also create a whole new folder. So to do that, I'm going to go back into the strings folder here. So I'll move up to the first entry here, this accept English UK text, and then change that for hello, and then save that out. Now, do I want this string retranslated? Yes, I do. And then I'll click OK there, so then these yellow icons appear to indicate that it requires retranslation. I'll then change another one down here. I'll change this one for goodbye. And then save that out, and yes, I would like that retranslated as well. So then the icons also appear there. Now what I'll do is create a new string folder. So I'll right click here, create a new string folder, and call this one extra, and set up some default string values for the strings that I'm about to create. Insert a counter variable, folder path, right click again, counter folder, and I'll set a max length in characters of 30. And then OK that. So this extra folder has now appeared here. 5 here, and then save those out. Now I'll add some UK source language to these cells. Now we can see that the translation cells here are locked at the moment, so what we need to do is right click on extra down here, and then set ready for translation. So these will now become clear and now ready to be exported. So I can click on Spanish Trans here, and now create a new export here. So I can actually specify the period as I explained earlier. So what I can do here is I can select the date and then say this is the previous time that we ran from. I'm going to stick that up there and then change this for an hour later. Refresh the preview, and then you'll see here the 5 new strings that I've created and the 2 that I've changed now appear here. So I can now start an export, and I call this Spanish Trans 2, and then save that out. And there we go, 7 strings have now been exported, and I can now click on finish. So now what I'll do is import the original Spanish translated file. So I'll go to my original export here, and then I'll start my import. So I go through the wizard here, next, and I've got my Spanish translation file here. I'll open that, and it will give me a preview here. So 77 entries of 77. I can also set whether or not it was input by myself or by somebody else within the team. And then I can click on Start. So the import's done. Please press the next button to view and resolve warnings. So now this has created 3 warnings over here, but there have been 74 successful imports. So what I can do now is I can press OK, and then if I click on Next, it'll then create this particular screen here. This screen provides me with a lot more detail on what these particular warnings are. So for instance, we have 2 out-of-date warnings, which were the 2 strings that I changed a second ago, and then we have one that's actually an empty translation. So while it was actually being filled in, one was actually missed out. So there's no translation for this string, translation text is empty. So what we can do now is we can click on Finish, and it will actually create a new export of those 3 warnings. So we'll select Yes, and then we'll call it Span Warnings, and then save. So while that import took place and those warnings were then generated, this file is actually out at the Spanish translator, and these are the 5 additional strings we created and the 2 that had actually changed. So now what we're going to do is change those again. So we've got hola, adios, and then we need to add the other ones here. So I've now added those additional Spanish translations, and I can send that back for import. So we'll click on the export, the second one that we did. We'll start our import here, back through the wizard. It's called Spanish Trans 2. Open that, and there we have, and then we have our language translations there. And we can start that. Excellent, 7 successful imports, no warnings. Import was finished, no warnings or errors reported. So that's great stuff. So I can now finish that. And now we need to go back to those warnings that we previously created. So I've now opened up the Spanish warnings file that we received, so the hello, goodbye and normal strings here. So we also have the information here for the translator of what's actually wrong with that particular string. So this translation is out of date, this one's out of date as well, and there was no translation for this string, so I need to work on that now. So I'll just stick these in. And then we have normal, which actually is normal. And then save those out, and then I'll send those back for import. So we go down to our warning export just found here, and then what we can do is we can start our import now. Again, back through the wizard. It's called Span Warnings, which it finds automatically, and then open that, and then it'll show us here target language translation. That looks correct to me. And we click on Start, and there's still 2 warnings here. So import done. Press the next button to view and resolve warnings. So there's 2 warnings there. Click OK, and then click on Next. And then there's a newer translation that actually exists in the database. So the translation in the database, do you want to use it, yes or no? So what we can do is we can then click on Finish here. So would you like to create a new export of the remaining warnings? If no, the warnings will be treated as if skipped. So we'll treat that as a no. These strings actually form part of a more recent export. We can ignore those. Once you're happy that an export has been completed and been imported correctly and all warnings have been cleared, then we recommend that you right click on the export itself and then close this export. So you'll see here there's now a green icon by that particular export. You can make sure that everything is kept tidy and up to date, and obviously visually representative, so you can see whether or not something's red or green and whether or not it requires further action.